So you're all lucky to see the sequel of Four Idiots. And as a preview of that. And so I'm also privileged to have my colleagues. And when I said that we have succeeded 1 out of 100 times, Huda was, it seems, told that at least we have started our number.
I'm curious to know what that 1 means.
That's myself. So, just to introduce Huda, I think her title is Director. Right. In the last 15 years, she has been with SELCO Foundation for 14-15 years, and I hardly know any success of hers in the last 14-15 years. But in the last 2 years, definitely 2 very good successes. She got married and had a kid. Congratulations. Rachita is, as you know, in our case, the queen of failures, and that's why she is curating this failure conference, and we asked her to invite all the people who have failed. And so you're all honored to have been in this audience that you're, and that's when, as you know, she is responsible for curating 80% of this. I think we should all give a hand. And can you see that the SELCO people whom they report to for this are just like, okay, right. So for gender balance, we have Thomas. We have no idea why he's here. Has 30 years of SELCO experience. And so glad to have 3 of them here. And we have not shared any question. I have not shared because I don't know what questions I'm going to ask. And with them, but I have told them one thing I just want to add to it is it's not about failures. Vas says, please don't use the word we. It's I failed. Number 2 is that one thing I would like to ask from the audiences, which they don't know about, is that if you think their answers are diplomatic, please raise your hands, and then they'll have to change their answers. Right, so we want to pull in the audience here, for example, right? So let's start with Huda. Right, I have a list of our all failed programs, which I didn't make a list, but it was too big. So can you basically say, so which has been your biggest, where you think? And also, I want to add, when you're asking your failures, I just don't want to say it's your failure, but also please add to it the consequence of the failure. And why I'm saying that a lot of people say it's my failure, but we do not explain the consequence, because we are in a sector where the consequence of the failure is much larger than you explaining the failure. You might move on. You might move on and change your jobs, but the consequence of the failure is felt by somebody else who rectifies that. That becomes more critical than just. So please also explain the consequence of that failure. Okay, to make it easier. First question. What do you don't tell the funders? Let's start it easy. What do you don't tell the funders?
I mean, the answer is the same. I'm guessing it will be a similar answer for the both of the questions, but so I think what I feel is the bigger failure, rather the biggest failure, and somewhere I don't know if we communicate this to funders or even to others as well, that there is a certain pace or a rate at which we have grown over the years. And I think what ends up happening is the difficulty to, of course, retain a certain quality of, building someone's knowledge and consciousness on what the roots or the philosophy or the thought process is of someone who wants to do ecosystem building, someone who wants to do kind of
diplomatic.
No, I mean, okay, long story short, I think the place where I struggle, or rather I personally have failed, I feel, is to spend more time with lateral leadership that enters the organization, to give it more time. And I think the consequence of that is that we have lost not only really good people maybe along the journey internally, but also critical partnerships and people that we could have gained along the way, which I think overall has affected the pace or the quality at which we could have done work. Because I think somewhere I don't believe there's such a thing as handover. I don't believe that when someone leaves the organization after really, having that, there's no such thing as, okay, you can hire somebody else and hand over. I personally feel like that doesn't work, because I think what you hold in your subconscious, you cannot hand over, I think. I think that is a consequence of the pace at which we have grown. We have been...
You got married?
No. Yeah, of course. I mean, those things also play a role. I think you do need to somewhere, figure out what also helps you sustain as an individual, right? Like, if you don't sustain, then you can't help anybody else sustain. And I think that's very important. I think that's, don't compare yourself to the Harishes. You can't possibly, meet that. I think just, that's definitely something that I believe very strongly, I think. But yeah, possibly there are conflicting priorities, there are balances that you need to make, there are priorities that you need to make, and you don't always convey those in a manner, and it may also not need to, but yeah, that's probably the same thing that I think consequences are very severe though, because I feel you lose a lot in the process in terms of what the thought process, the camaraderie, the understanding. You could actually build much faster if you may have retained those people partnerships or those thought processes along the way.
Because the complaint is that Huda and Rachita don't answer in time.
I think many people in the audience will also have that complaint. It's not just within the organization. Yes, I do agree, both in terms of that I think generally what I have learned also is that like managing is a very, very different thing than what we imagine. It's like you manage a work plan and a task versus you manage relationships and motivation of people, and what is underestimated is how much effort goes into that. Like even for a conference like this, you can tell people be an usher or register people, but then we want to do it the reason we want to do it is because when you register, you get to know who is at the conference. And that means that while people are taking a name down, they're also saying, oh, what do you do? And that's the relationship that you want in every interaction, which is a very different thing to mentor on. And it takes time. And sometimes I think what we fail on is that we get so, our relationships with people in the organization are so strong that when someone wants to move on, you are just like, ugh. We thought we were friends, we thought we were working on this thing together, and how can this happen? So it's also that, you want people to stick to the cause, you want people to stick in the organization, and you want people to maintain that relationships over a long time and build layers to it. And then you have a lot of these roadblocks and come in the way, and you have to kind of start again. And I think that's where, at least I struggle, when you have to go through that cycle again and again, it's tiring to do that. Again, you cannot compare to many of you who are in the audience, because I feel also stupid that I feel tired after 5 years of doing it, as someone who is a part of a bigger organization, whereas many of you have been doing it for 20, 30 years, and I don't know what keeps the motivation up to do that.
Thanks, Rachita. So, Thomas, I know 30 years, you have had not many at all, but even the smallest, if you can explain to audience, even the smallest one success you ever had.
I think in 2009 we got rid of you from SELCO India. No, but if you were to ask me one thing that I personally would think that I was a success in, is when I think I went on a sabbatical in 2009 with the idea that I come back after 2 years and handed over charge to the next set of people. There was Revati, who was the CFO, who took over as the vice president from me. And there were others in the organization, including the team that is there today, Mohan and a lot of the others. I think the most satisfying thing for me when I came back after 2 years was that I was no longer needed in the organization. So when I came back after my sabbatical, there was no role for me. And I said, okay, I might as well stay out because the organization is doing well. And I thought that was one of the few successes, failures I can list plenty, but one of the few successes that I felt very happy about was that I'm no longer required in an organization, which means I've let the organization grow.
But according to the notes, that was not what happened behind, okay? No, sorry, please stop. No, sorry. Thomas, a failure, actual failure.
Many. If one of the things that, when I was thinking of the failures and I had no idea what you'd ask. So I was like, okay, what is a failure that I can really talk about? Here was, I think, I was very cocky at one point in time when I was the vice president of SELCO, basically saying that, okay, I've created an organization, or we've created an organization that is capable of selling anything to the rural poor. And at that point in time when SELCO Foundation came down and requested us to sell cook stoves, and I still remember the conversation that I had with SELCO Foundation, when SELCO Foundation, EnviroFit, and we were discussing, and they said, do you think SELCO can sell cook stoves? I told them, if we can sell 15,000 rupees or $500 at that point in time worth solar lighting systems to the poor, what is a 1,500 rupee cook stove? And then we started the cook stove program. One of the things that I very genuinely thought that, SELCO will excel in, we will be selling, millions and millions of cook stoves in this world, and then realized that cook stoves was a totally different ballgame. There was absolutely no way that the team that we had created in SELCO could sell cook stoves simply because selling home lighting systems or selling solar, PV systems was so much more easier. There was a panel, there was a battery, there were lights, you go install it. The only variations were what type of panels, what type of batteries, and what luminaires. While every cook stove, even though the product was the same, was a different selling process. For a woman who wanted to cook dal and rice in her house versus a woman who wanted to cook something in North Karnataka, I don't think our team was equipped for that. So cook stove suddenly became a big challenge. And all the more because when we started selling cook stoves, I thought, we would just sell and forget, but then realized that the very culture that we had of providing after-sales service was actually the biggest hindrance to that, because I would have technicians who would go down into the field and come back, after this thing, and submit a bill of almost 1,500 rupees to service the cook stove for which I'd sold to the end user for 1,500. And then we actually went back and said, we can't sell any more cook stoves. I think we admitted failure to Shell. It hit my ego very, very badly those days that, I had to say that SELCO can't do something, especially when I was leading the organization, but we had to say we failed.
Thanks, Thomas. So, this is both to Rachita and Huda. And Thomas, remember when in the previous days when presentations we were making, right? You had a lot of the aha moments, for example, and then just because the slide was not complete, you add a statement to fill up the slide, right? We need to understand the end user, right? And we added, or climate is a crisis, right? Then we added there, right? As to fill up the slides, right? Now that is the main thing, and we have the aha moments 1 or 2, right? And especially, if I read, I hope the RNS team and knowledge team, all the SELCO, please call all the SELCO people inside. So I want them, because we want to be transparent, guys. Be brutal as you want about the own organization. So previously, I used to read our reports after I get up. Now you read my reports before going to sleep. Has the quality in terms of overall in the sector, and also I'm putting SELCO in the middle, why has the quality of reports actually gone down, and why? Or do you agree or disagree? I believe that our reports quality has gone down.
Or are we hiring consultants? I do agree that our quality of reports have gone down. And I think I often like there is an eye for detail. And I don't mean like eye for detail in terms of font is the same everywhere. Earlier, we used to have that problem. That's a very superficial problem. We said we always wanted reports which are practice-based, which means that you're not just saying that, speak about your failures. You're saying when you speak about your failures, because people are vulnerable, X, Y, Z conditions need to be there. And, you need to give details. Like, you need to be a step-by-step guide on. So when I say eye for detail, it's that. I think if I kind of go back, the one thing that happened why we have lost that eye for detail to a certain extent, and I hope it's not permanent, we're rectifying it. But earlier when we used to write, it's like folks who are doing programs end to end, and they are the ones who conceptualize it, they are the ones who implement it, they are the ones who kind of watch it through. And then when you ask them, write a report about this, they know the details through and through. But somewhere when you do it now with bigger teams, communication between the teams need to be so strong. And only because that communication is strong will the person who's the RNS team now, which was just part of the, the implementation team earlier, will be able to write it better. And there are things which also you realize that, a lot of people who come trained as researchers are trained to ask questions to a number of people, but are not trained to have an instinct of, is the person who I'm asking the question saying the right thing or the wrong thing? Because sometimes when you're asking people, even within the organization, a question, they might motivation be to finish that conversation quickly and move on, or to make it seem like they're doing a good job, or so do I as a researcher have an instinct that I am not getting the right answer or not speaking to the right person in the organization or in the sector is a very different research skill altogether. So somewhere that I think we've also, we need to build more is that while we have research skills and definitely need to have a research team, we need to have an instinct for that practitioner eye and that eye for detail, which is definitely something that needs to be built more by going on the field, by more interactions and more exposure. But yeah, it's not there right now.
Huda?
If I have to build on what Rachita is saying, I think somewhere the people writing the reports, yes, the internal piece is there, but I feel like we often fail to actually put ourselves in the shoes of the person who's reading it and who they are, right? For who are we writing the report, right? And I think somewhere that piece is so critical, because sometimes when I've sat with people also who are writing the report, when you read it back to them saying that, okay, now you put yourself in somebody's shoes who's actually reading maybe 30, 40 reports, who's getting so many things, or think, what will you get out of this? Then I think even they start to rethink, okay, there is a framing issue, there is an issue in, okay, how are we randomly saying this? Because you already know so much and you just assume someone else is coming from the same context and reading it. So somewhere I feel like, making your reports very easy to get and grasp and understand where things are lying, those are, again, skill sets that I feel our report writers are missing, or rather we are missing and we need to do, or rather.
But also think, Huda, that then it's the responsibility of us who are day to day that we are not mentoring enough. We are not mentoring enough. The question is, because sometimes I also say, when I get the reports, rather than sitting with people to rectify and saying what it is, I'm actually unfortunately losing my blood pressure. I do call up Thomas and said, what is the quality of the report? Rather than calling Thomas, same time I would sit with the youngster to actually make it rectified, rather than blaming the youngster. And that's a mistake that I've done in the last 2 years. And so hopefully the blood pressure pills can help change that. But that's something that we are creating, and I myself feel in the room when I feel so bad after letting the youngster go from the room and said, this report, whom are you writing the report just because it's a deliverable that the funder asked? Because what we wanted is that the report should be as good it is today as it would be in 2035. And if I'm blaming the funder, I'm taking the first blame now. And I was reflecting on it, why did I tell that youngster out without telling what should have been done in the... It's very easy to say it was wrong, but I myself am not spending time on doing that at all. And that's ridiculous in many ways, yeah.
I think adding to what Huda was saying earlier, it's not just that, I think we try our best to take time to spend with people, but the time needs to be that quality time. Like we end up spending time on like day-to-day task kind of things versus these real social soil kind of things that we need to develop within the organization as well. So that's the piece that somewhere, to say that, as you're saying, like if you come into a review meeting or something, okay, this is not wrong, but this is the way to do it. But then that's a very different meeting, and that's a very different, it needs time, and we need to kind of create that space.
I actually feel like maybe I don't have the answer to this, but I do feel like what you want in the report, what we all want in the report, and the person writing the report, and the person who's actually putting together, they all want the same thing, and they're all thinking in the same way. Like, I'll just give you an example. It's not in the report, right? But a lot of the writers and the people, they have that thought process. They also want what you want. So there is something else that is a gap. No, I don't know whether it's the format, whether it's the methodology, whether it's the way in which things need to be done. Because, like, I'll just give you an example, right? I don't want to take names, but just an example. Right? So Shrestha is somebody who writes reports for her. She writes a lot of reports,
Shrestha,
right?
sorry.
So she's been writing about issues of PVTGs, actual end user centric, actual real stuff that's separate from the report. And she's interested in that. We are also interested in that. But somewhere this report is coming in between. So there is something which is off. Either the format or the way or the timing or the methodology, something which is off. Because she does that quality of storytelling, that quality of narrative building. She has that. She's doing that. It's just not in the report. So there's something off with the report itself as the thing. I don't know.
Is it a deliverable at all? Yeah. So
I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's something off with the, yeah. No, I mean... No, I'm not blaming it on people who ask. The reports are important, but I think the way in which they are asked and what exactly is the purpose of it and how it should be done needs to be rethought of. I mean, we need to do it. I don't think anybody does not have the appetite to actually rethink what should be in the report and how should the report be developed. But yeah.
So, Anand, I hope Anand is here from Apurva. Somewhere he should be. Yeah, Anand is there. So, I hope you help us out here, Anand. So coming back to again, I'll come back to Thomas a bit later. We've had some spectacular failures, right? In terms of, we went, at least in the last 4 years, a couple of things that we did, like big organizations to first announce, and then the big announcements have always failed 100% of the time, right? Especially, and unfortunately, both Rachita and Huda don't believe in gender. And so it was on March 8th, 2 years ago, when we launched a huge gender livelihoods program, huge publicity, 25,000 women, etc., etc. Please tell us. Why?
You mean you?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's your turn, Harish.
No, I can add like my personal failure. I think again another failure that I have had is, I think when you think about new things, right? You think about new programs, new institutions, and you want to grow, you want to build in that way. I think one of the most fundamental stupid thing that you assume is that you'll hire somebody and they will run with it, and you will kind of advise and you will go along the way and it'll happen, right? And I think this is one of those classic examples where it's great, we have this program, we have this thought process, needs to be done. Stakeholders are interested, women are interested, we have the thought, we have the solution, and let's hire somebody and they will build a team and we will kind of advise them and be the board. And I think that is really that assumption that format is going to work is just so off. I think that's what we tried to do here and failed. As usual, finding the right person was the first challenge. Spending time on finding the right person was the other challenge. We did try, and I think another mistake would be there are certain very talented people in the organization and they end up getting a lot. They already have a lot, you do this also, and they're also interested, so they take it up, and then two things start to suffer. what that person is working on also and what the new thing that you've given them also, right? And these are all, I mean, I'm guessing these are classic mistakes, but I don't know. I don't know if just we're making them, but I think this is one of those things where we have learned the hard way on not underestimating what it actually takes to get something off the ground, which this one never took off, accordingly. It never took off at all.
Some part of the audience will actually relate it to it at a much how she said some people make a lot of announcements, then create an organization and hire somebody else. Hint, hint, we all know. So the question is, but we fail in these organizations. You want to speak?
No, what was that?
What?
I didn't get it. Who hint? What was the hint?
Don't you think similar announcements have been made and people hire for that announcements and has a spectacular collapse? And then we reframe the word failure and learning. I don't know why we use the word learning at all, right? And the consequences, I'm glad. What is the consequences of that?
I think the consequence of that is that you had a very precious attention time from the stakeholders, from the journalists, from the media, and you really had that opportunity which you lost, which may not come back. I also feel trust gets eroded, and trust is very difficult to build back. It's a marathon, you need to be at it. Of course, yes, XYZ, but much easier said than done, for sure.
But the mistake was mine because the impulse that we did not do anything and suddenly March 8th was there, and it is again a symbolic thing which we did. And because it was announced, the Chief Secretary of Karnataka, who's now present Chief Secretary, called and said, can we inculcate this 25,000 women program into the state's program? Everything was in right. And that completely collapsed from an attention span of ours, that if I go back to the Chief Secretary right now, she'll say, talk about everything else Harish you do, except that program because you let us down. I'm sure she's going to say that. So the kind of a personal biggest failure that don't just announce programs like that without having there are 3 or 4 steps that you start taking, and that, rightly Huda said that there was an assumption that those things were actually in place, which was absolute. And gender, the 25,000 women program was the biggest.
Yeah, but I just want to say that, these failures I feel are also important, like they're necessary. I don't know if others also feel that way, that, I feel like if you don't make those announcements, those commitments, if you don't have this vision, then nothing else follows as well, right? Like, I'm just saying there are also things which you have done on an impulse which has worked out, So,
The failure conference?
I don't know how well it's worked out, but...
Not this one. So thanks for that, Thomas sir. Thomas was in charge of Vice President of SELCO India, the social enterprise, and moved on to work for a couple of other organizations as a consultant, and now he works with SELCO Foundation. Tell one that the consequence of one of your failures that you repent.
I think when Dr. Ravi Kannan yesterday spoke about the fact that everybody else in the organization had so many problems, and he did not realize that it was coming, it was there, and these are the issues, and is it a right thing? I don't think anything struck my mind so strongly as the fact that must be that's what even we did. The same mistakes. Have we failed to understand our team? Have we failed to understand the motivations of our team? Have we, ignored the fact that the youth have very different aspirations from the fact that, they were not driven like us. So one of the things that I think I failed in doing or, creating as a vice president in SELCO was the fact that didn't really bother about creating an induction program where the thinking of SELCO was transferred. In the early days of SELCO, a lot of what we did was transferred because you had senior technicians training the junior technicians, you had senior people, hand-holding the junior people. We were a small team, so we were able to carry on that philosophy very easily. But as the team grew today, I think SELCO India is around 600, close to 600 people, and somehow we had not formalized that thinking process, and I'm sure, I don't think I have the courage to go back and have a similar study like what Dr. Ravi Kannan did in his hospital, because I'm sure the results will be almost the same. And I think one of the things that we missed out was, did we create the consequence of not having done this, have we not created an organization that will keep on having this futuristic thinking, or keep on, thinking the way we thought that organization would think. SELCO, I'm talking specifically of SELCO India. Would it be a very different organization in the next 10 years? And would, at some point in time, somebody turn around and say, look, you and Harish screwed up?
Which is right.
That's right. Which is true. Because I think that's something that, even today, yesterday when he spoke, it suddenly struck me, this is the same thing. I could have been sitting in Dr. Ravi's, seat and telling Huda, yes, we did not understand the next generation. We did not understand, what drives them. And I think that's something that the consequences of what will happen is we might have a very different organization than what we planned. I don't know whether that's good or bad, but we will have a different organization.
No, there's a complete failure of both you and me. Failure that everybody would come fire in the belly and somebody, but we had to mentor, and which we, I think, lost, I would say lost easy 10 years of youngsters that could have been mentored. Thanks, Thomas, for bringing that up, and some consequences you already see, while it's not very, very surface level, but we would see at the deeper level. So Huda, coming back, what everybody has as a complaint in the civil society, that the problem of the civil society is that it has a CEO founder syndrome, right?
What's the question?
The question is, isn't it high time to kick the CEO? Because is it high time to kick the CEO out? No, because it's most of the work is done by both of you. Thomas and me are typical Yannis in many ways. I mean, before she kicks me out here. Right? No, but I see there is a sin. I know how we work internally, but there is a criticism outside, right? Two criticisms. One is in a sense that should the CEO be kicked out, number one. And number two is, are we becoming a funder? Right?
Yeah.
But if both of you can take the answer, yeah. And then I want to have Thomas's view on.
I'll answer the second question first. So one of the, I would say, more recent failures in the last, 3-4 years that we have seen as we've grown and as we've, taken up new geographies and more complex issues, is because you're bringing in two things, right? One is you're bringing in solutions and you're bringing in resources, right? Like monetary resources. There is a very fair or rather very real failure which has happened in certain states and geographies where we have been viewed either as a funder or as a vendor. Because you're suggesting certain solutions, you become a vendor. Then if that solution doesn't work, it's not working, you need to come and fix it. So you fail to sort of make that distinction, but also because, of course, at the end of it, when the people are dealing on the ground, they're working, they're communicating, there is a very fine line that you draw as a potential ecosystem builders or, network kind of, catalyzers, right? And the worst part is when you become a funder, because you're never ever going to get the real, genuine issues out at all if you're being viewed as a funder. And I think in certain places where we're being viewed as a funder, like I also really have stepped back and questioned, boss, this conversation, there was really something wrong with this discussion because you're bringing in certain resources, right? And you're suddenly being viewed as differently. So I think that is probably something that, again, the learning from that is that stop saying that I'm not a funder or I'm not a vendor. Don't just show it in action. Just keep your head down and just keep proving, through action and through consistent dedication that if you act and if you look like it, if you talk like it, if you act like it, then of course you are it, right? So I think that piece is something that consistently, unless you actually showcase what value add you're bringing in beyond that resource, you're not going to change it, right?
The second one I'll answer, okay? And I'll ask Thomas too. Why I asked that CEO thing is very specifically because as you've seen, Rachita and Huda, the way they are, I mean, they are brilliant and we should give them applause, right? Absolutely, right? And Thomas and me bring in a little bit from the experience side, but little value to that. But it's high time to tell to a lot of the CEOs and the founders, don't stick on if you don't add. So today, Thomas and me have to prove ourselves 100 times more than last 5 years at what do we need to do. Because it's a transaction call, it's a time. It's like, how, are we in, like, for example, we have no clue of what Instagram is or whatever
That's what
I
our
don't-
organization is running on, Instagram.
No, but the thing is, things have to change. The civil society has to change, and just putting all the CEOs on spot here, because it's time to hand over, because otherwise the civil society will know, because from our own experience of civil society 15 years ago, it was again the elder generation saying that, and you always get these gaps of 10 years, which is dangerous for this sector, not for the private sector at least, for this sector specifically. So, yeah, so about the funder thing in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to what Huda is saying. Like mostly many a times when we start a partnership, it can be viewed as a funding partnership, because as someone who's building an ecosystem, you are bringing in the gap resources that are there, that are needed, because of which a system is not working in a certain way. So the first reaction from many organizations can be that these guys are funders, because that's not how many other collaborations or partnerships work. But I think in addition to what Huda said, another thing that we have failed on is often going in a project mode and not remembering what that gap funding was for, and making sure that there is a plan to remove that after a while as well. Our program analytics team, for example, like they have this thing of saying, like, is this a transitionary gap funding that is needed now to get the market to a certain level, prove out an innovation, get the early pilot? Or is it something which would be a subsidy, which is always needed, which means that we need to find a source of funding in the system for it? And sometimes all of us have not, like from our side as leadership, and me as well, like I haven't paid attention to having a strategy for that. That needs to be activated 2 or 3 years down the line, but the road for it needs to be laid down today. So while we say, okay, yes, partnership, subsidy, 10%, 20%, where is that going to come out if you're saying you're going to exit and you don't want to be looked at as a funder? That's also part of the system building. So on the funder piece, yes, like I think there are pieces that's my analysis of where it's failing.
So we have before a couple of more minutes.
CEO question.
Question one?
Strip the CEO.
Yeah, CEO. Thomas.
So I mean, if I can,
You know, Harish, I normally don't like saying good things about you, but if there's one single thing that I can say that you've done well in your life, is that you've identified the next level of people who could take over from you. That's the only credit that I'll give you ever. Okay, if today you've been able to identify these 2 kids, in my opinion, you know, kids. They might be 15 years, but where is 15 to 30? If you've been able to identify, you came in as an intern? You came in as an intern. Mohan, who heads SELCO India today, came in as an office administrator. Now, I don't think I can give credit to anybody else other than you for the fact that you've been able to identify the potential and help them grow. And I think that's where. And the fact that today you and I are redundant is only because you made that happen.
Exactly.
No.
okay,
No,
I want to like just bring up, so Donald Norman was in office. We had the privilege because of Sanjay and C4EC, and he was in office. And I have to tell you, I think he's 90. And he was sitting across the table from me, and he genuinely was taking down notes. What are we doing? And he actually said, actually, I'm planning to start a new charity. What do you think of X? And I'm just like, okay, at 90, you're planning to start and build an organization. So I just don't see why both of you even bring up these things of, oh, we're redundant, we don't know. I mean, like, what is the... You can take
Harish,
inspiration
let's start a new
from
charity.
No, I'm just saying, like, there
So he
is no
started at
reason
90, we
to
started
even...
60, boss.
Why not?
What is it? I mean, is it...
Sanjay. Yeah, sorry.
No, I mean, I don't know why this is I know that this has been asked, and this has primarily been asked by funders, as far as I understand, in terms of, you know, when are you going to leave, Harish? What is your next plan, Harish? Why are you sticking on, Harish? Like, I do know that this has been asked by that, and again, I don't think, like, I'm going to, like, defend, or I'm going to say what is it that, why is it that we continue to need you, and, you know, but, I mean, I actually don't know why this is even a question.
Can I also, just in terms of...
Is it diplomatic?
Can I just say what I
Okay.
mean? Okay. No, I think like when you say founder syndrome, it's a lot in terms of the ideology of the organization. Like, is the decision making one person? And I know that we have lots to improve, and we have, in the past, I think like 1 or 2 years, we have to get that back as an organization. But I would like to believe that when we say like SELCO has to have a startup spirit, it is that it has multiple decision makers. And leader thing is, in my mind, like overrated. Every team needs a leader, like Prakash and others are leaders on the field. And if we don't have that, then of course we are a really bad organization. We're not an organization, we're working for one person. But I don't think like that. Again, I might be Happy Troopers Club with Dr. Ravi, but I am very aware that in 1 or 2 years we might lose it if we don't have, we don't create ways to have leaders everywhere. But I am aware that we're at a very important juncture in the organization.
2 years are there for us, not the UA. We are at least better than USAID. So, nobody from there's people from USAID couldn't come. Sorry, for obvious reasons. What? They might not be in the organization, don't worry. Any last couple of thoughts, questions?
I don't know if the audience has any questions. We can, yeah.
They would like to ask.
Oh, that's Manoj. I'll give it to Paul first. Paul. And then Manoj, and the last question to Manoj. Oh, Veena-ji. Veena-ji, and then Paul, and then...
So I want to take away the 2 years that Harish just got from his colleagues. I think coming back to the first question, why should you leave the organization? Because you have bigger things to do. Because the challenges in front of the world are staring at you. The priorities at the leadership have changed. And I think a conference like this take cognizance of that, and you should let your leadership go whenever they want to go, because you are ready. That's all.
So, USAID has come in and fired me in a very diplomatic and nice way. Thank you. Yes, Salvatore. And then please pass on the mic to Paul.
Hi. I don't know, Salvatore.
Salvatore from WHO.
I don't know, Harish, why, if you got tired or you are lazy, or I don't know why you want to leave. I don't know what's going on. This discussion is nonsense, Harish. You're leaving. Nonsense. No sense. For different reasons. No. Don't say the no. Think every time I say something, you say no. Wait. Listen. So, of course, the team is amazing and really, guys, wonderful. Every time I come here from another session, for another conference, and coming to this event, and SELCO is really breathing some fresh air. Is wonderful. Big applause to all the team. Really fantastic. The leadership is fantastic, but I think Harish is a little bit, if you take this kind of decision, which I know you will never take, but if you take this kind of decision because the funders are asking for it, come on, that's a joke. Who cares about what the funders are asking? I mean, that's not SELCO philosophy. I'm sorry. I can't stop, listen. I know WHO lost the US, but wait, we are still WHO. Listen. So basically, the point is, WHO didn't have a clue on what SELCO Foundation was until a few years ago, right? Then I talked with my directors, and then I say, no, Maria, I really, trust me, I come from the energy sector. I know these guys in India. Okay, bring it here. And Harish spoke with the leadership of WHO. After 5 minutes, WHO was in love with SELCO Foundation, with that guy, called that guy. So you bring, Harish, something which, wait. The point is not the bureaucratic approach, the team is ready, the funders are asking. No, it's something different, right? It's what you bring when you talk to people, when it's not just a bureaucratic. People are ready. I leave and so you don't go anywhere, Harish. Stay there, and that's enough.
Paul. Hey, I also want to go to conferences, man.
Thank you. I'm happy you spotted me here. I will join Salvatore. I mean, this urgency and this eagerness to live, you're not going anywhere. It's really true because I am putting it this way. I'm putting it this way. You have built this for a long time.
Paul, nothing about me. So
no,
any
not
other questions you want to ask?
I'm coming.
No,
I will say
diverting from that question.
Let's listen.
It's about the
because
failure
really,
of SELCO.
you've built a system, and this system has transitioned into an institution. So even if you leave,
No.
there's nothing. It still
Paul,
stays.
agree, respectful, but let's
Yes.
go back to the
So-
failure of SELCO.
so-
It's not, yeah.
So
we are
going to the
diverting it from
failure,
SELCO.
I see a sense of urgency for new things because of the need to respond to the new.
It was not about CEO, it was the concept.
I'm coming.
Yeah.
I'm coming to the point. So, the sense of urgency to deliver can also lead to failure because there is speed and there are moving pieces, and you want to respond to those moving pieces. So, think about the global hubs. There was a very good thought process behind the global hubs. We experimented for the last 5 years. Can we sit back and review together how those 5 years have been and what we want to do for the next 5 years? I understand there is urgency. Funders are pushing, new opportunities are emerging, but if we don't sit carefully and review the past 5 years and make, because there's a lot of data that we gathered, a lot of information and learnings. If we don't review that carefully and rush into new models with a lot of assumptions, we'll come back after 5 years into a nice conference like this and discuss failures.
Thanks, Paul. So people have specific question on failures. Yes, Hande.
So, at the risk of making you cry, part of the theme that I heard is that you've paid a lot of attention to growing SELCO externally and less attention to taking care of SELCO internally. Is that true? And if so, what are you going to do about it?
Thank you, Hande. I think it's, I would say, internally we are divided into two parts. One is, lot of the internal work is, there's a good team under Huda, Rachita who are handling it. So I would not say at all, I mean, it's not true that internally we have not grown in terms of capacity. But the way we also push inside the organization, we don't matter if we have done 98% right. If those 2% are not right, let's focus on the 2% and also make it right. Even if somebody criticizes, and that might be a very small criticism of something that we have not done, but let us focus and make sure not to push back the criticism and say that's right and let's do it. So the question is, internally, the pushback that we have had inside the organization is that what is the bar we push? The number one fundamental Hande is that if you want to be a typical NGO, write a proposal, get the funding, you can do it forever, right? We don't want to be that NGO. We don't want to be that NGO that takes in money for our survival. We are not going to tomorrow, a funder has stopped and it is collapsing, and people hunt for jobs. No, our primary is what is happening to the programs on the ground. Are they going to survive or not, right? So are we that systems level change as an organization? And as Waverly, we want to kill ourselves by 2035, right? We should be redundant. So if our benchmark is not so high, saying that what is that, if anybody else is doing, then why should we be doing that? So that's why pushing ourselves, we will never be right, and we will always be frustrated because that's the only way to become motivated. So it's a push on Rachita.
I also wanted to add that I think like the Harish gave this title to fail or not to try, and I think somewhere like we strive the organization to be something that is saying that to fail or not to try, but also what are we continuously failing on, and so it needs to be improved upon, because it really it depends on what we define our success metrics as. So we can say that, oh, everyone's very happy, very comfortable, you know, we're coming to the office, we are doing our work, you know, people are getting energy solutions, all is good. But it's creating that uncomfortable space all the time, which is saying, is that good enough? And so, like, have times have changed? Do we need to change? Has our capacity increased? And so we can do a lot more. And I think that's the piece that is really the to fail or not to try for me, which is like, you know, are you constantly like looking at what you're failing on? And somewhere internally in the organization, that's not an easy place to be, because you're constantly told what you are not doing well. It's coming from a good space. It's coming from the say that your role in the sector, as I think all of us understand it as SELCO, is to say what are we not doing right and push yourself in that uncomfortable spot. But it's not a space for everyone. And that's the piece which is hard.
So there's a text from Rohini who says, I'm glad people pushed you back. If I were there, I would have demolished you. Rohini, who's watching on YouTube.
Yeah, here. Harish and everybody on the panel, Huda, Thomas and Rachita. I'm Varsha. Important objective of this conference is also learning from failures, right? So when failures happen, egos get hurt, confidence get demolished, trust gets eroded. Lot of not only the mission, but lot of soft damage that happens as part of that failure. What do you do, each one of you as a leader, not to let that failure lead to another failure?
I can do.
There's okay.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, Harish. So we all touched upon the failures that happen internally, right? The consequence of a failure to the internal audience, which is the organization. But what I'm curious to understand is the impact of our work is for beneficiaries. So what are the failures that happen from SELCO on ground? What changes for beneficiaries? Because as beneficiaries, they won't care about what happens in the organization, but what happens to them? So on the ground, what are those failures? That's something that I'm curious about.
Samir, and then I think. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. See, my question is, yes, this is a conference on failures, but somewhere I'm getting a sense that with the organization's review, there is a pendulum towards being overly critical. And I'm just wondering, is that necessary for an organization? Or is it, somehow I always believe it's good to have balance in whatever we do. It doesn't have to be one extreme or the other extreme. And so while I understand review is very important, analyzing is important, evaluating is important, do we need to keep focusing on failures for an organization to move on and continue in its mission? That is number one, you know. And my second question is, why is there so much of discussion on individuals in the team? See, the whole team is one unit working towards a certain mission. So why this focus on you leaving, me becoming redundant, you becoming important? So why are we talking of these single units? Because all the units together make up the team. And so these are two questions that are bothering my mind. So.
Additional question.
One second. Can you just pass the mic to Samir and then Manoj? Samir has had
No, I just wanted to substitute for Rohini. I think you've been discussing failure from a very safe space of the past. Right, the team you have assembled, I mean, you're one of the rare organizations which has invested in systems thinking, some really solid work. You have more goodwill than most of us will ever have. This room is testimony to that. You cut across sectors, you cut across work. Why do you hold yourself back to specific domains, specific geographies in your thinking, in your ability to respond to things? How do you know you're failing if you're not shooting higher? I mean, I'm taking a windscreen view, not a rear view, rear view, mirror view.
Just to add to what you said, I was about to talk about. See, I was expecting little more brutal self-analysis from you guys because you are friends and we trust you and you are in a very safe environment. Since yesterday, I'm seeing people are not talking about failure actually in this conference, right? We are actually talking about failure also for the claps, right? What you are discussing are standard operating and strategic issues every organization faces. You know why I am sitting here in the audience as your partner, friend, well-wisher, and someone who admires you, that you would have given at least example of one program that failed and its consequences. You are not talking about that. You are talking about some 2009 SELCO Foundation cook stove stuff. Last 5 years, you have done some wonderful programs. We all look at you as, you are inspiring to all of us in this sector who are new. You need to pick up one program which failed, and I'm sure all of us have failure in our portfolio, and talk about that. We admire you for that, right? We're talking about Harish is indispensable or not for that we can discuss separately with Anshu also, whether Gunj will survive without him and all that. Well, be real. Guys, we are here, all of us are here, I don't know how many people will agree with me, we are here because we love you. We love your work. So talk about some real stuff. Don't give this, Huda is this and Harish is this. We know that.
Yes, I have an additional question to SELCO. I'm living in Usmanyanga. I'm coming from Tanzania. We found SELCO founded the same way when Kakute was founded in 1995. But my question here is that the organization is about the mission and vision. Now, when you started SELCO, you had a vision and mission. Who owned that vision and mission by that time? Now, has the mission and vision changed? Who changed it? And who owns it? If the owner of the vision and mission now have changed, then you are correct of what you're saying. But if you are still own that, you cannot get a way out from it.
Sure.
But now, you have two programs, one which is scaling to international and one which is local. Is the ownership different? Is it the same organization or different organization?
Thanks, man. We can maybe 2 more questions and then we'll do closing round, is what I'm thinking.
My question.
So, yeah.
So when you started the discussion and Harish asked you guys about the failures, and then you told us about you didn't give more time and you prioritize different things, that is family. But in the last talk, we heard that family is also important, and I think you are saying that time is always limited. So the answer I feel from you is a very superficial, because time is going to be always limited, and we have to give time to family, to our organization. So I want you to dig more. What is the real cause?
Sure. Okay. Last question, Ambuj Sakan, and then we'll do closing.
Hello. Hello, everybody. I'm Vijay here, and my question is that there is this constant sort of a dilemma as leaders, as individuals taking decisions with the team and for the organization, And when we say we keep failing and we keep, there are consequences to it, there are decisions that we take and there have consequences both for the community, for the organization and overall. And there is this dilemma with the point that after having failed so many times, right, the question is that why do you even continue, right? So, there is this push that you keep persisting, you keep trying, you keep falling and you keep waking up and you keep trying, right? And the other point is that they say that you need to know when to quit, when to leave, right? How do you as leaders handle this dilemma? Because if you're failing so many times and if it has consequences, then what right as a leader, as me, should be even continuing, right? And at what time should I even be taking a call saying that no, I think it's probably time and I should move on? I think that's something that I probably would like to hear. And based on your experience, if we failed so many times, then why haven't we thought about that?
Last question.
Yeah, thanks. I actually do want to come back to the CEO question, but I don't want to make it about Harish. It's really, to me, the question is not about Harish, but I think it's a really important question for the civil society space, which is what he actually prefaced his question with. A lot of civil society organizations do have a founder syndrome. And the question, I think, at least what I read and what Harish was kind of trying to engage with is, what is the right time for someone to leave? I don't want Harish to leave SELCO. I think SELCO is doing great stuff. I've learned a lot from them. I'm a friend and an admirer, so this is not about trying to get Harish out. I think it's to provoke a bigger conversation, because I think, to me, such a conference is not only about reflecting on past failures, but also anticipating what might lead to future failures, not only not in SELCO, but in civil society more broadly. And I think that question is a really important question. It doesn't need to come to a closure on the panel. I don't think it's about this particular individual in this particular case, but I do hope that that question will cause for some greater reflection within our own ecosystem more broadly, because I think it's a really important question, and I certainly see it very critical to our future of our civil society organizations. So I just kind of wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
No, I just could not resist stepping in. And Harish, I'm also getting text messages from Rohini. I think what is most important to understand is that we are all talking together about failure because it's in the context of building resilience. It's not in the context of failing and rescinding or failing and going back. The question is, every failure makes us more resilient. I think that framing we are losing, right? When we are talking and listening to Huda, listening to Rachita, Thomas, or you, we are understanding the recognition of failure, but I think what we really want to learn is, how do you build such a resilient organization? Because resilience is the ability to function under failure, right? And I think that's what is a big learning. And I think if you reflect on that and share, failures are there with all of us. All of us face at different points in time, but that makes us more resilient. Because what the society needs is extremely resilient leaders and resilient organizations to build the resilience of the society, because failures are everywhere. So I think while the amping up of the failure and Harish's intent at making this brutally honest is great, but I think we would like to learn what makes us resilient, the ability to function under failure.
Maybe we should have started with the questions, because now there's a pressure to summarize in 2 minutes what is probably like good lengthy discussions. But I'll take one or two, and then of course maybe go into discussions later. In terms of programmatic failures, I think we've had many. And I think we often don't have a strategy. We throw like 100 things like that, and then 2 of them catch attention and rest of them fail. But like my personal failure is something that I still, I hope we're able to revive this year, is our urban strategy. Like I started at SELCO, I think 5 years, we had something where we were looking at urban energy issues, and urban vulnerability is just so different, and we underestimated it badly. We worked in a city like Bangalore where the civil society is structured very differently than some of the older cities where poverty has existed and migration has existed since a really, really long time. And everything that we were doing was a band-aid. You just keep putting money in, you keep putting grants in, and you were never really creating a safety net which was resilient. It would always break and kind of fall apart. And that's where we actually let it go. Our urban portfolio does not exist anymore. Like but of course, like there is a, like urban poverty is sometimes worse than rural poverty. There are not many people working on it. So I always feel like we need to get back to it, but we don't really have a strategy for it. So that's like one personal failure. And with growing urbanization, it's something that I feel as an organization we should take up. And it has consequences, of course. Many communities, I think there were 20 slums that we were working in Bangalore, which we don't work in anymore. And we don't know how to go back to it as well. But it doesn't feel right because you're pumping in money and you're taking it from somewhere else. You have to always make that choice. And in terms of like, how do you kind of cope with failures? I think it's easy to say I failed. It's hard to make it a productive failure. It's hard to dissect the failures from it. Like even for example, in this conference itself, I can say 400 people came in, listened to failure conversations. 60 people came in and actually told about their failure stories. Maybe one person will actually go back and rectify and will be able to dissect the learnings and have the decision-making power in their organizations as well that they'll be able to rectify. So there is, I feel like I don't know how to kind of do that. We can do something like an impact failure conference, but I don't think like civil society we have structures which would allow us to actually imbibe it and actually make the change. So yeah, I hope it's not a conference that we see 10 years down the line where people are just still talking about failures. I don't know.
So just to respond to a couple of questions and final remarks as well, I'm guessing. I think there were two questions around programs. So we have failed in so many programs and projects, and I think we've documented it so much and spoken about it so much, which is why we didn't focus on programs. But there are cases where we have actually made the poor poorer, I would say, with our interventions. It's documented cases. There are cases where we wanted to do, work around, district blanketing and really saturation approach, and that's ended up being a very shallow numbers game, if I can, honestly say that's what it's ended up being, right? And, there are a lot of documentation also. I think you went, where have you failed on the ground? There are post-harvest processing solutions, there are value chain solutions, cook stores. I think those failures are plenty, which is why we didn't talk about failures on the ground in programs, but definitely that's a different discussion. I think there were two questions around, resilience, why do you continue to fail? And I think the third question that Varsha had asked was around how do you avoid future failures? I think we actually believe that failures is a very positive term. I think a lot of people feel it's so negative and it's really, not really the right word and it's too strong and it's, I actually feel like we fail and learn every day, and I feel like that's actually, it helps each one of us, or rather it's helped me to figure out ways what not to do, right? At least you know what to avoid, what not to do, and how to go about things which are not good, right? At least you're removing that from the equation, which I think takes you closer. There is no silver bullet. If any of us had a silver bullet, I think we would be applying it and we would all be learning from that. So I think that we consider failures positively. We do feel, I think, Sanjay, critically what you asked is how do you build resilience? I can only answer that personally. I don't know how we've managed from an organizational perspective. It's a combination of, I believe, luck, timing, partnerships, people, all of those aspects that has kind of led to certain things. But personally, I feel like for me, it's taken a lot of letting, and I want to use Otto's phrase here, letting ego go. It's just a lot of letting ego go completely, very, very, in a very real manner, that you cannot hold on to, position control. I think there's certain things which happen which you just need to, just step back and sort of say, okay, let's reflect and move forward. Not go into why did this happen, why was this not there, why did that, just keep, I think keep focusing on what you can do better is kind of something that's, and without actually putting stress and pressure on yourself that pushes you down a negative spiral. I think as long as that frustration keeps you positively motivated, that's important. The moment that frustration starts pushing you lower is when you need to be like, okay boss, something is off here. So I think that's what helps me pick up every day and say, okay, we failed, we need to keep going on, because at the end of it, we're all here to work for that, that end user, that last mile farmer, the women entrepreneurs, and I think that is what you need to keep in mind. Okay, 100 things happen, I'm still here for that, so I will let everything else go and continue to work towards it. I think that's just a piece on resilience, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can take it offline on the priority piece. I'll definitely discuss that offline.
I have failed on one thing. One is that if there are too many questions, I don't know which one to answer. So, but having said that, I think there were two questions, one on failure and resilience, and one that somebody spoke on, if you fail so many times, don't you need to go? If that's the case, none of us would be here. I think the fact that we are here because we failed is the fact that there is resilience in us, and the fact that we want to make a change, which is why we're talking about our failures, we're discussing about our failures, we're trying to bring out more and more failures in the whole process, simply because I think somewhere we are trying to build that resilience into us and be able to become those agents of change. It's got nothing to do with individuals failing, because when I started SELCO with Harish, I think every alternate day was a failure because none of us knew how to run a business. We were like absolutely fresh, no idea of how to get things moving. We'd never run a business before. We failed, we got up, we walked again, we failed again, and again we failed. There were times when, the organization almost closed, and we had some wonderful investors who came and rescued us in the process. Even, I think, very recently, Harish and I were talking about, will we last another year or more? I'm talking of SELCO India, but the fact is that I'm confident that we will, and we will move forward. And I think that's the sort of culture that we were able to build in the team, and something that I'm very proud of.
Nothing to add. Nothing to add to just say that we will. I still remember the day when I heard a shouting in the office and went there, and Thomas was really shouting at somebody, and then he looks at me and said, Harish, either he leaves or I leave. And both of them are still there. So we are resilient. That was 25 years ago, so both of us are still there. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, part of it, all our colleagues, stakeholders. Let's do it because we are not doing it for ourselves, and we're doing it for ultimately the 5 billion people who have to have safety nets. And with climate coming in, it's our responsibility to make it happen. Thank you so much for this. And